In another episode of Bitcoin Fixes This, we're going to talk about some hangups happening at Chase Bank. Also, I have great news for those of you who value your privacy. We got a great upgrade to an amazing privacy coin. And right when the FTX creditors thought that they were going to be getting paid out, the SEC stepped in yet again to protect them or to delay the payment. Anyway, we're going to get into all of that. Thank you for watching Crypto Tips. My name is Heidi. If you're new to this channel, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button. We put out videos every day, keeping you educated on what to expect in this cryptocurrency space. And if what we provide on this YouTube channel just isn't enough for you, there's plenty more information available at learningcrypto.com. I highly recommend it. So with everything that's going on between the Telegram CEO being arrested, the Tornado Cash devs being arrested, and Brazil sanctioning X, there's a lot and should be a growing demand for tools that protect your privacy and ultimately your ability to freely interact with this digital world however you see fit, not how a government regulator thinks that you should be allowed to interact. So Monero, one of the best, longest standing, most reputable privacy coins out there, has a new upgrade called full chain membership proofs. And what this does is it takes their ring signature privacy technology, the concept of obfuscating the sender and receiver of funds, and makes it 10 times more private. Furthermore, developers are claiming that the FCNP upgrade is raising the anonymity set from 16 to 100 million. So again, this is great news when the threat of privacy is being further and further encroached upon on your digital life online. Tools like Monero will allow you to freely transact in cryptocurrencies however you see fit. On the other hand, we have MakerDAO, which is doing a bit of a rebrand from Maker to Sky and from DAI to Sky USD, and the ticker there is USDS. Now, there's some important things to note about this change is that you're not being, if you are a user of Maker or a user of their, I'm going to use air quotes, decentralized stablecoin DAI. I use air quotes because I know that every time I've researched DAI, I found that their holdings, the things backing that stablecoin, even though DAI itself is technically a decentralized stablecoin, the types of currencies that they are using to back DAI are actually centralized stablecoins, the vast majority of that. In addition to some certain partnerships that they've had with actual traditional banks as well. But anyway, they are rebranding to Sky. And there's a big difference between DAI and USDS, or Sky USD, is that Sky USD will have a freeze function very similar to what we see with Tether, USDT, and Circle, USDC, offered by Coinbase. Now, they're very clear to say that DAI will not have this freeze function, but I'm guessing that they're rebranding due to the fact that they know that they're not so centralized and they can very easily fall under the thumb of a regulator that will demand them to be regulatory compliant. And as a stablecoin issuer, a major thing that they will have to have as a tool is the ability to freeze funds. This is commonly used when there's things like hacks that happen. They can freeze the funds so that the hacker can no longer move those coins. Those coins are frozen. Potentially could be returned back to those who were victims of that hack. There are benefits to this ability to freeze funds, but that's depending on who has the control and who is telling them to freeze funds and for what reason. We saw with USDC 2 years ago or last year, they preemptively froze funds involved with the mixer service Tornado Cash. They didn't have to. No one was even asking them to or had a court order for them to do so. They willingly, voluntarily, proactively froze users' funds for something that wasn't even a legal issue at that time. Tether, on the other hand, did not. But even the fact that there is a decision that could be made to freeze or not freeze funds, and that decision could be made by a single entity, screams centralized control. And we should all know that that translates to a bottleneck to something that will not be censorship resistant in the future. So they're saying DAI will continue to not have this freeze fund, but Sky USD will. Also, they're allowing traders to trade one-to-one DAI to USDS if they want to make that switch. Also, because MakerDAO functions as a DAO, the users or holders of the Maker token can also convert to the Sky token at a ratio of 1 Maker for 24,000 Sky tokens. Now, as I mentioned in the intro of this video, Bitcoin fixes this. There was an interesting glitch happening at Chase Bank where users found out that they could deposit a check, whether or not they actually had those funds in their account or not. They could write a check, deposit it into their account, and then immediately make a cash withdrawal based on the check amount that they had most recently deposited. Essentially printing money out of thin air. For a second, Chase users knew what it felt like to be the Federal Reserve, knew what it felt like to be a bank that can just issue funds out of thin air. So it's kind of funny. Not so funny is that, they got caught, obviously, and those who had participated in this had wrongfully withdrawn funds that they didn't actually have are now being hit with huge negative balances on their account or holds on their account altogether. Now, how does Bitcoin fix this? That is exactly what blockchain technology does. It prevents the ability to double spend funds. It prevents the ability to mint tokens out of thin air. That is what the Bitcoin blockchain does. That's what a lot of cryptocurrencies and their blockchains do. That's how they function, is to prevent double spending. So if they were trying to do this with Bitcoin, the second that they would try to initiate that transaction, it would be flagged and rejected by the system. They wouldn't even be able to accomplish this. Maybe that's why central banks and the Federal Reserve is so threatened by blockchain technology, because it releases that type of centralized power from their hands and spreads it out to the entire network, so true checks and balances can actually be accomplished, and it is not subjected to any kind of political views or stronghold in terms of power, and it's brought back to the people. It's a beautiful thing. And another beautiful thing is that the Bitcoin balances on centralized exchanges are actually down 25% from its peak. That's huge. That means even during this time of price accumulation phase, some call it boring, some are, have never seen a bear market before calling this a bear market. That's great. That means that people aren't fazed by this price movement and that they're actually interested in storing this Bitcoin long term, or at the very least, I hope that they're educated enough to realize that they are actually taking full ownership finally of their Bitcoin, and they don't plan to sell it anytime soon. So that's great. That's great news as well. Now, for the people who wish they took their funds off of FTX, that famous centralized exchange back in 2022 before it went down, the SEC is yet again just wiggling right in the way of hindering the repayment to the creditors of FTX. There is a plan in place to repay these creditors with stable coins or other digital currencies, and the SEC is saying, I don't know if that's legal. They're reserving their right to dispute this ability to repay the creditors in terms of stable coins. And just as I explained that blockchain technology is far more efficient at honest transactions than a banking sector, the SEC obviously has no interest in protecting investors. They would far more prefer to expose those creditors back to the traditional financial system rather than use a much more efficient and probably cost-effective way to pay back these customers by using stable coins. It's a crazy world, right? I am so glad that cryptocurrency exists and it renders the SEC completely irrelevant. You know why? Because public blockchains are completely publicly auditable. That means that everything is viewable by the public to be analyzed and criticized, and problems can be very transparent, whereas it basically means a regulator is not needed whatsoever, because everyone knows what's going on. Everyone clearly knows the situation, the status of that network, whereas the SEC loves to work behind closed doors, claim that they're doing it for the benefit of the end user. Anyone who remembers the truth about the 2008 financial crisis knows that the SEC didn't care that investment banks were successfully, falsely, untruthfully attaining a AAA rating for their mortgage-backed securities should have been regulated by the SEC from the credit rating agency. And again, those were all just deals done behind closed doors, favors being paid one to another, and who paid the price for that was the end user. The taxpayer paid for the bailouts of the big banks. The big investment bankers got their huge bonuses for such a job well done. Anyway, that was one of the many reasons why Bitcoin was created. If you want to know many more of those reasons and a lot of cool things about the history of Bitcoin and the evolution of cryptocurrencies, I highly recommend you check out my book called Why Crypto, available to you at shop.learningcrypto.com. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.